My fiancé cheated with someone he met on a business trip after 6 years together, a long journey of heartbreak and self-discovery. In my own words, I begin with a memory. I was 19, nearly fresh out of high school, an optimistic and somewhat naive young woman who believed in love stories that ended well. Back then, I had an image in my head of love as a mutual commitment, something unwavering. Once two people pledged themselves to each other. I saw glimpses of that in my parents, who had their share of arguments yet always seemed to reconcile, hand in hand. I wanted that kind of stable affection for myself. I imagined meeting someone, going through years of trials, eventually leading to a proposal, engagement, marriage, the whole dream. I thought I found that person, ironically, at a time in my life when I least expected it. My sophomore year of college. But let me not get ahead of myself. I was an ambitious student, juggling part-time jobs and coursework. I first saw Noah in the campus library. He was 20, a junior majoring in business. We struck up a friendly conversation. I honestly can't recall who approached whom. I remember I was looking for a certain textbook, and he offered to help me search. We ended up talking for nearly an hour, forgetting the study tasks at hand. Something about his quiet confidence and thoughtful remarks drew me in. We agreed to meet again for coffee, which led to a series of casual campus dates, cheap pizza spots, late-night library sessions, free concerts in the auditorium. By the end of the semester, we were official, as in telling friends we were together. I recall how those early days brimmed with a giddiness I'd never felt. Like everything was possible. No seemed devoted in a sweet, shy way, often surprising me with little gestures, a note hidden in my backpack, or a rose from the campus flower vendor. I'd confide in my roommates that I felt so lucky that I'd finally found a truly caring partner. I was 19, the world felt bright and shimmering with potential. Unfortunately, about 6 months after we started dating, Noah faced a major setback. The summer job he'd lined up fell through. He ended up jobless and anxious. I tried to console him, reminding him we were young, that he had time to figure things out. But I saw how deflated he became, especially with his parents pushing him to either find a stable plan or move home. That tension culminated in him deciding to move across the country. Maybe to find better prospects, maybe to get out from under the weight of parental expectations. I was disappointed, but tried to be supportive. I had my own obligations, finishing college, working part-time. We promised to stay together, even with the looming distance. It felt like a big test for us. I was so in love, I believed we could endure it. The next couple of years turned into a long-distance whirlwind. I finished my bachelor's, while Noah hopped between small gigs, sometimes living with relatives, sometimes renting a cheap apartment. We visited each other whenever we could, often every few months. The pandemic came crashing in just a year or so later, adding new complications. I ended up working remotely for a time. Ironically, that let me travel to no city more often when restrictions eased, spending a week or two each month. I remember feeling proud that we overcame so many obstacles, believing that if we could handle long distance plus a global pandemic, we must be truly committed. Nearly 4 years in, I landed a stable, well-paying job in my own hometown. Noah also managed to secure a decent position in finance in his city. I started feeling wary of the distance. I was in my mid-20s, craving a normal relationship where we could share a place, do everyday tasks side by side. Noah seemed receptive. In fact, one evening, we were on a video call, and he nonchalantly mentioned that I could move to him if I wanted, that he wasn't sure he'd be comfortable moving back to my city. I mulled it over. I had a condo in my hometown, close to my parents. I had a supportive social circle. Was I ready to uproot my life for him? Turns out I was. I told my boss I'd like to relocate if possible, citing personal reasons. The company was expanding, so they offered me a relocation package to work in a branch near Nose City. Everything happened fast. I sold my condo in a flurry, said tearful goodbyes to family and friends, and within 3 months, I was on a plane with my entire life in boxes. I was 27 or so then, believing that I was forging a better future with the man I loved. We got an apartment together in his city, a small but cozy one-bedroom with a decent view of the skyline. At first, it was joyous. We were no longer star-crossed lovers relying on video calls or monthly visits. We had dinners together every night, explored local restaurants, made new couple friends. I tried to be gracious around his parents, who were polite, if a bit overbearing. I quickly noticed I had no real circle of my own besides No, but I figured I'd develop local friendships. In time, I was just happy to be building a shared life at last. Fast forward a year into living together. We were at a mall, idly strolling, when No spotted a jewelry store and teased that we should check out rings. I blinked, flustered. We'd occasionally talked about marriage in a vague sense, but not in detail. Seeing my excitement, he elaborated that he felt ready for the next step. I soared with happiness, imagining telling my parents, planning a wedding. Over the following months, we sometimes visited ring shops, discussed preferences. I looked up pictures of wedding gowns late at night, heart full of anticipation. Then we planned an unrelated trip to Europe in the late fall. I guess I assumed maybe he'd propose there, in some scenic spot. I was right. In a charming old square, he got on one knee and asked me to marry him. I cried, said yes. Passers-by clapped. I was on top of the world, certain all our struggles, distance, job changes, were behind us. I phoned my parents that night, sharing the news. I remember saying, "We've done the hardest part. Now it's time to enjoy life together." A month or so after the proposal, No started dropping hints of dissatisfaction. It began subtly, "I don't love how we handle finances." Or, "Sometimes wonder if we're truly compatible." I was taken aback. These issues never arose in the past 5 years, so why now? He claimed they'd always been there, but he'd never voiced them. I offered to discuss them in detail, even recommended we try couples counseling if he felt uncertain. He nodded, half-heartedly. I was perplexed. I chalked it up to pre-wedding nerves, but his discontent grew. About 6 months post-engagement, he took a 3-week business trip to Asia. I joined him for 1 week, and we had a lovely time exploring. After I flew back home, he texted me that he'd do a short group tour with colleagues before returning. I shrugged, thinking he was capitalizing on the free time. But upon his return, I sensed a distance. He was cagey, more moody, uninterested in wedding planning. I asked him if something happened abroad. He insisted no, all was fine, just jet lag. One evening, he said he was off to the gym, but I decided to text him on Facebook Messenger for a quick question. The app told me, "The user is on another call," which was odd. I confronted him that night. Suspicious, cornered, he confessed he'd met a girl on the group tour. A solo traveller. They'd quit it off, spent half a day together, and had been messaging or calling each other nightly. My heart sank. I asked, "Did you cheat?" He claimed no, insisted they were just friends. I demanded to see messages. Indeed, they seemed mostly friendly. But I recognized emotional intimacy, subtle flirtation. He admitted, "I have some feelings, maybe subconscious, because we've been struggling." I was furious. I told him if he had romantic interest in her, that was emotional cheating, and I wasn't okay with it. He agreed to stop talking to her. I tried to forgive him. I wanted to salvage us. The next 9 months were a slow death of our relationship. We tried couples therapy. Noah kept complaining about issues he'd never brought up before. I tried to compromise, but he'd stonewall me. Eventually, he insisted we take a break, which escalated to, we should break up. I found myself begging him to reconsider. A humiliating position after 6 years together, an engagement, everything. Looking back, I see I shouldn't have begged. If he was so unwilling, I should have walked away. But I was in denial, my heart clinging to the love story I'd built in my mind. Somewhere during that meltdown, I suspect he reopened contact with the Asian woman. I had no direct proof, but signs pointed to it. He'd spend nights ignoring me in the apartment, stepping outside for calls. Eventually, he admitted he had feelings for her, that he wanted to do something for himself for once. I was devastated. I demanded we break up fully, no illusions. He left to stay with his parents, occasionally dropping by to gather items. For 2 months, we sorted out our shared lease, dividing furniture, finances. It was gut-wrenching, me sleeping alone in that once cozy apartment, the ring a mocking presence in my drawer. Less than 2 weeks after our final break, I noticed on social media that some of his close guy friends started following a new private Instagram account. I recognized the profile pic of him next to a woman, the same woman he'd met in Asia. Apparently they were co-official so soon. I felt physically sick. Then I discovered from a friend's post that No flew to Asia again to see her, and soon they launched a couple's Instagram profile, plastering cutesy pictures of them in exotic locations with cringe-worthy captions. I realized they must have been building up to this. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment fling. The betrayal stung in multiple directions. I'd sacrificed so much, moved away from my support system, left behind my family and friends, only for him to toss me aside for someone he'd known briefly. We spent years building up to marriage, and he discarded me for this new romance. He introduced her to his friends, the same friends I hosted in our apartment regularly. I felt used, humiliated, worthless. I also felt furious that he never apologized or even owned up to how all this started with him texting her behind my back. Looking back, I realize I was with him for almost 3 years of his unemployment, supporting him emotionally. I was the one working, while he struggled to find a job and complained about how his parents pressured him. I gave him loyalty and understanding. Then once he got a stable job again, with new confidence, he apparently decided I wasn't enough. I see it now as a sign that his commitment was conditional on his own insecurities. I ended up battered by his shift in power. The heartbreak was real. I spent days in tears, hating myself for not ending it sooner. I should have left when I found the emotional affair. But I tried to fix it. I believed in the potential I saw in him. Now I wonder if I was just naive. I resolved never to let anyone overshadow my sense of self or autonomy again. I'll never uproot my life blindly for a partner who shows signs of lying or half-commitment. I had always been strong, capable, with a good career and supportive family. I let my love blind me. I regret that, but I also learned from it. I reflect on the final outcome. He's now in a public relationship with that woman, traveling the world, posting selfies. I suspect it started as an affair while we were still engaged. I can't prove it, but the timeline suggests so. Some mutual acquaintances think it's an obvious case of cheating. I, for one, am done with him. I want no part of a man who can do that. I deserve real honesty, not half lies or dismissals. I accept I might never get closure or a direct apology. I find closure in trusting I made the right call walking away. My mother once said, "Sometimes heartbreak is the best teacher." I think of how I was all set to sign a marriage certificate with him, which would have tied me legally and financially to a man who sees women as interchangeable. I dodged a bullet, I guess. I no longer blame myself. I see I was a devoted partner, but his capacity for betrayal was beyond my control. Now I'm 29, single, rebuilding. I moved back to my hometown, found a new job that suits me even better. I reconnected with my old friends, so my social circle feels stable. Therapy helps me unlearn the guilt I carried. I realized I was worthy of a partner who respects me, who doesn't repeatedly hide new crushes or liaisons behind relationship issues. I vow that next time I see red flags, I'll speak up or walk away, not invest more years hoping for change. The biggest lesson from this is that length of a relationship doesn't guarantee loyalty or moral character. We can be with someone for 6 years and still discover they're a stranger. I also learned that forever talk means nothing if a person can't uphold basic honesty. I wish I'd discovered his true colours sooner, but better before marriage than after, as painful as it was. I move forward with a new perspective on love. I see that I can be open to love again, but I'll keep my eyes wide open, ensuring I don't lose my independence or ignore my instincts. I hold no illusions that I'll forget No's betrayal. It shaped me, but I won't let it define me. I remain hopeful I'll meet someone whose words and actions align, who'll stand by me through life's challenges, instead of discarding me for a fleeting spark. That's the story of how I discovered my fiancé cheated with someone he met on a business trip after 6 years together. It's messy, heartbreaking, and ultimately freeing. I emerged stronger, with clarity about my worth, and ready to carve a life unburdened by his broken promises.